Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather, last day of June of 2022. I'm David Percy. I'll be hosting the show. Up first, let's see, there's a flood warning out for the Taku River until 10 p.m. Friday, and taking a look at the river levels here, flood stage, or actually the flood stage is at around, 43 feet. Minor flood stage is at 43 feet. And river expected to crest 4 a.m. Friday morning, tomorrow morning, at about 44.42 feet. So lower than the flood of last year, but still flooding will occur in some areas there with the crest over the moderate flood stage level. Again, that's at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, and the flood warning out until 10 p.m. Friday evening. And from there, looking at the fire danger chart, big areas of extreme fire danger still covering the Yukon Flats there, Porcupine, Upper Yukon River, and uplands there, with very high fire danger up in toward Arctic Village. And also areas of extreme fire danger, pretty widespread from the central Tanana Valley, especially into the central interior and down into the northern Kuskokwim Valley there, west and northwest of the Alaska Range areas, with very high fire danger into the eastern Yukon Kuskokwim deltas, as well as eastern Norton Sound, very high fire danger. There's some extreme fire danger showing up in the Nulato Hills and up over the Kobuk Valley as well. Otherwise, kind of an improvement over south central Alaska today, with the low fire danger covering all the Copper River Basin and actually pushing in across the eastern and central Madanuska Valley, western central Susitna Valley, high to very high fire danger, lossy extreme due to the cooler conditions and higher humidities that have come in, and high to very high fire danger for the western Kenai Peninsula area, with high fire danger down toward Anchor Point, Homer, and those areas, Clam Gulch. Otherwise, from there, looking at satellite imagery, showing a lot of clear skies over interior Alaska again today, with some minor, insignificant convection developing over the Wrangell Mountains and the Alaska Range, even the Talkeetnas. Isolated thunderstorms likely breaking out here later this afternoon and into this evening, but still some smoky conditions, south winds and southeasterly flow now kind of pushing that back out of south central Alaska after it made an advance east and south of the Alaska Range yesterday afternoon and last night. Now it's kind of getting pushed back to the northwest there, so most of the smoke again west and north of the Alaska Range into the Yukon, with a fair amount of clearing there over Bristol Bay and Norton Sound there, even Kotzebue Sound, as well as into the Chukchi Sea. Quite an area of low clouds and fog and drizzle, a couple hundredths of an inch falling at Elfin Cove. I don't know if that's thick dew or actually light rain, but that was earlier this morning. And then a front pushing into the a frontal system, with actually a low center there developing near the eastern Aleutians, bringing some gusty winds and a fair amount of rain into the Fox Islands, Pribilofs, and Alaska Peninsula today, with the winds on the increase even along the southwest coast there, with the clouds still back to the west. And solid clouds across all the Bering Sea, with little, if any, clearing out in that area, with clouds streaming northward there into the St. Lawrence Island area and through the Bering Strait. And rolling this again, you can see that system quite vividly out there over the eastern Bering Sea, with a fairly active front coming across the Alaska Peninsula. And again, rainfall amounts range from 1/4 of an inch at St. Paul to 1/2 an inch at St. George, and the eastern Aleutians picked up 2/3 of an inch of rain, while the Alaska Peninsula, False Pass, had 1.5 inches of precipitation. 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts to go along with that heavy rain for the Alaska Peninsula, while the southwest coast already had winds kicking up 30 to 40 miles per hour out of the southeast. Otherwise, for tonight, that front moves rain and wind into the southwest coast, with some rain even into Bristol Bay, Togiak, Dillingham area, King Sam, and Egegik. Increasing rain southwest Kodiak Island. And low clouds, fog, and drizzle will be increasing, pushing northward at least into the Kenai area, possibly a little to the north of the, maybe even into northern Cook Inlet. Low clouds, fog, and drizzle thickening up again over Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island. And along the North Gulf Coast once again, and along the coast of the Panhandle, some of that pushing into the inner channels to some extent. Otherwise, showers diminishing over the eastern Alaska Range areas as smoke continue over the central interior, mostly south of the Yukon River, but some of that will actually extend north to the eastern Brooks Range. Low clouds and fog mainly over the central and eastern Arctic coast, with mostly clear skies continuing western Arctic coast into the Chukchi Sea. Lots of clouds over the Bering Sea, with some areas of light rain, fog, and drizzle, especially associated with the troughs. And for the forecast for Friday, that front moves up very close to the southwest coast, but the gusty winds will diminish as the whole system weakens considerably. A little breezy over Kodiak Island with periods of rain and fog, and IFR flying conditions there, as well as in the Gulf of Alaska with areas of low clouds and fog and drizzle, mostly off the North Gulf Coast, but some of that up into the southern Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay, western Prince William Sound, southern Cook Inlet, some showers or light rain, fog, and drizzle, with mostly cloudy skies now across south central Alaska, and a little cooler temperatures. Be some sun breaks probably at some point in the day tomorrow, as well as the Copper River Basin, but still interior temperatures anywhere from upper 70s to mid 80s for the highs tomorrow, with areas of smoke continuing, isolated scattered thunderstorm activity over the central and eastern Alaska Range. Light winds, low clouds, fog along areas of the Arctic coast, maybe the North Slope with some variable clouds, dry over the Panhandle. Another system brings some moisture into the western Aleutians. And that develops into another front that'll bring rain into the Shimiatu area, but way out west there, with just some possible drizzle and fog and low clouds. IFR, though, covering much of the Bering Sea in cloudy, foggy conditions. Periods of light rain, fog, and drizzle for Kodiak Island as that low really weakens the remnants of that frontal boundary, pushes some rain up into southern Cook Inlet, but probably not getting, probably won't reach the central Cook Inlet area. Look for variable clouds, partly sunny afternoon for south central Alaska. Sunny and hot over the eastern interior, highs 80 to 90 from Arctic Village southward through Fairbanks, Eagle, Fort Yukon, all the way down to Gulkana and the Copper River Basin. Highs will be in the 80s. And partly mostly sunny for the Panhandle after morning low clouds and fog. And for lows tonight, 40s for the Arctic coast to near 50 in the North Slope, and 50s, lower 60s interior Alaska, upper 40s to lower 50s south central Alaska, lower 50s Bristol Bay, 45 to 50 for the Bering Sea and the Alaska Peninsula, lower to mid 40s for the Aleutians, lows in the 50s for the Panhandle and Kodiak Island. Highs tomorrow, 60s to near 70 for the southeast coast, and 60s to mid 70s south central Alaska, near 80 for the Copper River Basin, and lower to mid 80s in the central and interior areas to near 90 in the Yukon Flats, near 80 again the Brooks Range, and well into the 70s, possibly even on the North Slope there. 50s to lower 60s for the Arctic coast. Point Lay, though, may reach 66 degrees. Otherwise cooler down to the southwest, with Bristol Bay looking at highs 50s to lower 60s, lower to mid 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Aleutians, Bering Sea to St. Lawrence Island, upper 50s for Kodiak, Alaska. Lows in the 40s for the North Slope, 45 to 50 for the central, or for the Brooks Range, actually 55 to 60. And upper 50s to near 60 in the northern interior, upper 40s to mid 50s, southern part of the state, and in the 50s for the Panhandle, 40s out to the west. Highs, again, 80 to 90 over the eastern interior from the eastern Brooks Range southward to the Copper River Basin around Gulkana, and 60s to mid 70s for the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula area, and mid 60s to mid 70s for the Panhandle. Otherwise, looking for highs in the mid 50s for the Kodiak Island area, upper 50s, lower 60s for Bristol Bay, and near 60 along the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather IFR, Eastern Arctic Coast. VFR, though, for the western coast, North Slope, Brooks Range, right on down into southern Alaska, northeast Bristol Bay VFR, but IFR spreading into Dillingham, Togiak, into the Auckland Mountains, and into the Yukon Delta to a certain extent there. Marginal VFR into the lower Yukon River, and IFR to the southern coast of the St. Lawrence Island area. Eastern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands, western Aleutians, and also a swath of IFR in that low cloud and fog deck there, pushing into Prince William Sound, possibly all the way to Portage, southward to Seward, Resurrection Bay, and along the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, shaping up like this. We've got IFR, Central Eastern Arctic Coast now. Otherwise, the North Slope still looking good. VFR there across the Brooks Range into the interior. Marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and the southern Kenai Peninsula, Seward, Resurrection Bay, Homer, Anchor Point, down to Seldovia, Fognak Island. IFR now over Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, westward to the Fox Islands, and northward to the Bering Strait. And then a swath of marginal VFR there over the central Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island to Adak and Atka, then back into the IFR for Shimi and Attu to Amchitka Island, southwest Bering Sea. Panhandle, good VFR, as well as the northwest coast. And for the day on Saturday, we've got IFR pushing inland now into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, across Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, all of Kodiak Island, and in across Kamishak Bay and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, western Cook Inlet. Marginal VFR for the eastern Kenai Peninsula, Turnagain Arm area into southern Prince William Sound, southwestern Prince William Sound. Otherwise VFR for the southeast coast and the central and eastern interior. And for the day Saturday afternoon, or for the afternoon during the day Saturday, IFR band kind of hung up there along the southwest coast, up across western Norton Sound to the Bering Strait, and southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, socked in with IFR, as is the southern Kenai Peninsula. Marginal VFR holds over Prince William Sound into eastern Turnagain Arm. VFR, though, for Cook Inlet, Manuscus, the Sitna Valley, Copper River Basin, Kuskokwim Valley, right on up to the Arctic coast there. Then you got some IFR along the central and eastern coast. VFR for the Panhandle. Passes, Anatuvik and Adigan. Chalk up another VFR day through both those passes there, as well as Lake Clark and Merrill. VFR, rainy, VFR. Windy, VFR. Isabel, same forecast, VFR. North and south entrance. Mentesta, VFR through the pass. Tanita, VFR, looking good. And Portage, though, IFR to start, improving to marginal VFR with all the low clouds and morning fog, giving way to just a low cloud deck in the afternoon. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, not much of a gradient across mainland Alaska, actually the eastern Bering Sea into northwest Canada, about 10,000 feet. Then some colder air aloft there, out over the west and northwest Bering Sea, down to 4,000 feet. And the first front kind of hanging up across southwest interior brings some isolated moderate rime icing there from Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, northwestward across all the southwest interior, Bristol Bay up to Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. And then another batch out over the western Aleutians of possibly mixed icing there, 6,000 to 13,000 feet in the chillier air, but 10,000 to 20,000 feet. So you got to get up to about 10,000 feet to the freezing level to worry about any icing over mainland Alaska. And for the jet stream, pretty slack flow with the slack gradient, thermal gradient we've got over the state. So the main jet south of the area, but you can see 120 knots just south of the Fox Islands. And then 9,000 feet, southeast winds, 30 to 40 knots there from across Kodiak Island, now into southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, right on up to the northwest coast. Westerlies 40 knots over the western Aleutians. 9,000 feet, south to southeast winds, 40 knots, Kodiak Island up to the Bering Strait coast, and west 40 knots over the western Aleutians. That translates into considerable moderate chop, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, the Aleutian Range, Bristol Bay, Yukon Delta to the Bering Strait, light to isolated moderate chop for the western Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Happy 4th of July! Next Monday, millions of people will look to the skies for fireworks. But since y'all are doing it already, why not keep looking up? Let's use those dark skies around the 4th to find 3 summer constellations. If you hit the darkness any night this week and look south, you'll see a fishhook-shaped constellation of Scorpio the Scorpion, with its bright red Antares at the heart. To its right, you'll see bright blue Spica in the constellation Virgo the Maiden. Libra is in between those, and it might seem a bit dark, but if you're outside for a while, you'll see a pair of stars named Zubin el-Janubi and Zubin el-Shamali. These stars were originally part of Scorpio, but the Romans decided to show off their justice in the sky, creating the scales of Libra. Today, we can look up and be reminded that change happens, and the hope for justice is written in the stars. Keep looking up.
Tsunamis are a big threat not only to Alaska but around the Pacific because we have a lot of really big fault lines, and when they move in big earthquakes, they often move the water around them, and that's what causes tsunamis. I am Summer Ohlendorf, and I'm the science officer at NOAA's National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. Alaska's main tsunami threat is from the subduction zone that lays along the southern end of the state. When an earthquake happens underneath the ocean at one of these subduction zones, the edge of one of the tectonic plates ends up kind of flipping up as stress is released at that plate boundary. And when it flips up, it pushes up the water that sits on top of it, and it moves a whole lot of water all at once. And that water all then becomes part of the tsunami wave. Just like when you throw a rock into a pond, you get a series of ripples that head outward from where the rock landed. Tsunami waves travel outward from the disturbance caused by the earthquake. And that means you can get multiple waves, and they're really long waves that can last for hours. Tsunami waves can be hundreds of miles long from one crest to the next crest. And that means that those crests, or the tops of the two waves, can come in 20 minutes apart to an hour apart. In the deep ocean, tsunami waves are actually usually pretty small. They can be anywhere from a few centimeters to maybe a meter, depending on how far offshore you are. As tsunami waves approach the coast, they kind of pile up on each other, and the energy gets compressed, so they grow in size and they slow down a lot as the wave is squeezed into a smaller space. If you're standing on the beach and a tsunami may be coming, you may hear strange noises like an approaching freight train. You may also see water being sucked away from the shore much further than it would for a low tide, and much faster. And sometimes you can hear things like rattling of sand and rocks. So just being alert for any strange ocean behavior and strange noises is always a good idea when you're near the coast. Most likely you're not going to see something like a huge 100-foot breaking wave as the tsunami approaches. It's probably going to look something more like a step of water that's maybe a few feet high, or just a turbulent mass of water. And it may not be very big, but it's going to be moving pretty fast, and it's going to be probably carrying a lot of debris with it. Even what we think of as small tsunamis can be really dangerous because they're associated with a lot of energy and a lot of fast-moving water. The National Tsunami Warning Center is part of NOAA and the National Weather Service. At the Tsunami Warning Center, we're monitoring streams from seismic data and sea level data 24/7 every day of the year. So the seismic data tells us how the Earth is moving, it tells us when there are earthquakes, and using that data we can figure out where the earthquakes are, how big they are, and how deep they are, which tells us something about the tsunami hazard from those quakes. So as far as monitoring water levels, there's something called the DART system. That stands for Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis. And what those are little stations where there's a pressure sensor on the ocean floor and a buoy anchored nearby. The way it knows the difference between a normal ocean swell and a tsunami is mostly because of the wavelength. And when we look at the signal from a DART system, we can see those big long waves and distinguish them from other smaller transient waves. Our system of coastal tide gauges is also distributed worldwide and all across the ocean basins. And what these end up telling us is what the tsunami wave is doing at the coastline. We send out an information statement when there's an earthquake near one of our coastlines that doesn't pose a tsunami hazard. We also have the tsunami watch that may be issued for a faraway earthquake that has the potential to impact one of our coastlines. The tsunami warning is our most serious level, and that is the case where we would want people to evacuate from the coastline. If you hear a tsunami warning, you'll want to evacuate from that hazard zone to travel to a safe shelter, or just anywhere that's inland or higher ground outside of the hazard zone. Ahead of time, you'll want to think about where to go, what to take, and how you'll communicate with your friends and family members once you get there. It's important to remember that during a tsunami evacuation, a lot of people are going to be crowded onto the same routes trying to evacuate. During a tsunami warning, you may hear about it over the TV and radio, an alert on your cell phone. You can also see tsunami information directly on our website, www.tsunami.gov. And we're also on Facebook and Twitter, where we issue our alerts during the event.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Northwest winds in the forecast for the south coast of the Panhandle tomorrow at 15 to 20 knots, seas 5 feet. West-northwest breeze at 10 to 15 knots for the north coast with 4-foot seas. Clarence Strait, looking at a northwest breeze tomorrow at 10 knots. Stevens Passage, south winds 10 knots. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, southerlies at 15 knots. And the outlook for the first day of the weekend, Saturday, south winds 20 knots for Lynn Canal, seas at about 4 feet. Otherwise, Stevens Passage, north at about 10 knots. Clarence Strait, south winds 10 knots. Northwest winds 15 knots on the south coast, seas 5 feet. West-northwest winds 10 knots on the north coast. Prince William Sound, variable winds at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Eastern North Gulf Coast, variable winds at 10 knots with 3-foot seas. East winds 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. For east winds, 25 to 30 knots, seas 5 to 8 feet. And Cook Inlet, northeast breeze at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. And for Saturday, Cook Inlet, northerly winds 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas. Otherwise, east winds 25 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, the Barren Islands, and Kamishak Bay, with seas running 7 to 8 feet. East winds 20 knots for the Middleton Island area on the eastern North Gulf Coast. And Prince William Sound, east winds at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Kodiak Island, southeast to northeast winds on Friday at 25 knots, 5 to 8-foot seas. And Bristol Bay, small craft advisories, southeast winds 25 knots. East-southeast winds 15 knots for the Alaska Peninsula with seas running 4 to 8 feet. And for Saturday, the Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest winds 15 knots, seas 4 to 7 feet. And for Bristol Bay, west winds of 15 knots. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, northeast winds 25 knots, seas 8 to 9 feet. For the Fox Islands on Friday, variable winds at 10 knots, seas 3 to 8 feet. And for Adak and Atka, west-southwest winds 10 to 15 knots, seas 4 to 8 feet. Southeast or southwest winds at 20 knots, 8-foot seas from Chitka Island. Small craft advisories for the western Aleutians for southwest winds at 25 knots. And for the western Aleutians on Saturday, south winds 25 knots, Adak and Atka, south winds at 20 knots. Eastern Aleutians, south to southwest winds at 15 knots, seas 4 to 7 feet. And for the southwest coast, small craft advisories on Friday for southeast winds at 25 knots, seas 8 feet. Lighter winds for the Pribilofs from the southwest at 10 knots, seas at about 5 feet. Small craft advisories from the northern Bering Sea around St. Matthew Island. South winds 25 knots with 9-foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, small craft advisory. Southeast winds 25 knots, seas around 10 feet. And for Saturday, St. Lawrence Island, south winds at 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Light variable winds for the Yukon Delta coast at 10 knots. West winds 10 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, seas 3 feet. And for the Pribilofs, southwest breeze at 15 knots with 5-foot seas, and south winds 20 knots for St. Matthew Island. For Friday, the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds will be out of the east 15 to 20 knots, and east 10 knots for the central coast. West side, easterlies 15 knots all the way down to Wales with seas running at 3 feet. And then for Saturday, from Wales to Cape Thompson, southeast winds 15 knots. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, south winds 15 knots. Western Arctic coast, southwest 15 knots. Central coast, east at 15 knots. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northeast breeze 5 to 10 knots. For tonight, low clouds and fog along the Arctic coast, mainly the central and eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise fair and mostly clear to variably cloudy with areas of smoke mostly north and west of the Alaska Range on up into the Yukon Flats area. And diminishing shower activity over the eastern Alaska Range and Wrangell Mountains. Rain moves into the southwest coast with gusty winds, possibly gusting as high as 40 to 50 miles an hour in the exposed locations of the Yukon Delta coast and Nunivak Island. Some light rain spreads into southwest Kodiak Island, and fog and drizzle on the increase into southern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, and staying over the North Gulf Coast and along the coast of the Panhandle. And then for the day on Friday, partly and mostly sunny after morning low clouds and fog for the southeast coast, cloudier and cooler for south central Alaska, but warmer in the interior. Look for highs in the 80s. From the Yukon Flats southward into the Fairbanks area, eastward to North Wayuntok, with rain over the southwest coast to Kodiak Island. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.